Ratchet and Clank, a series from Insomniac Games spanning 7 games and an OK movie. Hello and welcome to the Cut Content Of, a show where we try to find content that you aren't able to see in some amazing games. This week we're looking at the Ratchet and Clank series, which was suggested by Doggo Weekly. Also, we've started a brand new Discord server where you can ask us questions, leave suggestions, and see where we are with upcoming episodes. The first ever gameplay footage of Ratchet and Clank was shown off at E3 2002. Some small differences can be seen in the first official trailer. Health crates were shown with a different design at certain points in the trailer. In the final scene of the trailer, the Gadgetron vendor cannot be seen. A playable prototype of the game was available at E3, with only Metropolis playable and a few differences here and there. The planet Kerwin looked much more like Earth and was called Caldera in this version. A wanted poster appears much more frequently in this demo, instead of only in secret locations and cutscenes. When Ratchet only has one orb of nanotech left, Clank's eyes will change from green to yellow. In a cutscene, Rilgar is known as Planet Blackwater, and the lip syncing was left unchanged for the final game. There are also a few audio clips that were unused in this demo. Drek's original voice was much different.
Greetings, esteemed BLARG colleagues. As you can see, my robot construction forces are hard at work.
Big Al was originally going to say this.
I knew you'd be back. So, how about that upgrade?
The Gadgetron vendor doesn't say this in the final game.
Come on back again.
And there are also a few audio clips from other places, such as the 1992 film Army of Darkness.
You know your shoelaces untied. Hail to the king, baby.
And one of Scorpion's lines from Mortal Kombat.
Get over here!
These were likely originally used for testing audio in the engine while implementing it. When Ratchet and Clank released in November of 2002, it became an instant PlayStation classic. The game does have some surprising unused textures and icons. A very strange MS Paint drawing of a face. A placeholder image included with HUD graphics for the commercials. A placeholder icon depicting a crossed out chicken. An early Bolt icon. An icon for a cut weapon called the Mackerel 1000, which would swap out Ratchet's wrench for a fish. Another icon for a cut weapon called the Revolverator, which would grab enemies and spin them above Ratchet. This wasn't included as Ratchet could still be attacked while using it. A texture saying Invis, an earlier texture for the ammo crate used in later games in the series. A texture saying breastplate, 3 unused textures for an NPC called Fred. An image showing 2 planets is in the files for the help menu, intended for a removed planets category. There's also a similar image showing some sand sharks for a cut enemies category. There are also 2 unused models. One is a beta model for the Hydro Displacer, and the other is a glove called the Defensive Drone Glove, which would have been used to deploy drones instead of doing it automatically with the droid device. Drek's fleet has a hidden 6th vessel, which is used only in cutscenes. There's no collision and it will kill Ratchet. When picking up nanotech in the tutorial, the help desk girl usually says that's nanotech, but used to say,
"You just picked up nanotech."
2 unused cheats are referenced in the files. One of them says all levels, likely used to unlock every level, although this one doesn't work. The other cheat does work and makes Ratchet hold every weapon in his left hand. Here's the Game Shark code. You can also enable a debug mode in the NTSC version of the game with these Game Shark codes. There are loads of interesting things that can be turned on and off in here. In the files is some text that says, "This message has been cut." Now that's some cut content. There's also some text left over from the demo versions, and some text that Clank's mother should have said in the cutscene on Quartu, but never does. And there are a few options that were cut from the help menu. These show that Gadgetron may have actually been spelt differently earlier on in development, and that the game was originally going to remember which enemies you'd already encountered. This feature was implemented in the second game in the series. Ratchet and Clank returned a year later for a second outing on the PlayStation 2. Let's start with some unused graphics. There's an image of a crystal, which would have appeared on the bottom of the screen when you were near one. Icons for Giant, Clank, and the Thugs for Less leader were originally planned for the fight on Dobbo Orbit, but didn't make it in. This texture wasn't used in the final game, but shows up in some puzzles in earlier builds. A placeholder texture exists, which says Test HUD Alpha. There's a texture of a rainbow. A cut vehicle called the Bubble Sub still has an icon left in the files. The courier ship from the first game has an icon left in the files. A few textures were left over from the original game, including an icon for an infobot, the Gadgetron vendor's font, the pilot helmet's icon, the mine gloves icon, some air meters with a bubble which were used as a placeholder for the fuel meter by the levitator, and a meter for the morph array and an egg to go with it. 4 strange placeholder graphics were left in the files. One of them is a man with text saying, "If only we had all the art we need." That man is asset manager Carl Grande, and according to Mike Stout, a developer, that image is for a weapon that doesn't have an icon or menu art yet. Grande was our asset manager, so he put the picture in there so people would be reminded to contact him about it. Carl also appears in another placeholder image, featuring 2 other people from Insomniac, saying, "Together we can find someone else to blame." A third placeholder image exists for missions with no menu graphics, saying, "It feels lonely to be walking alone in the streets, and more so when we do not have the right screenshot." Yep, this is a placeholder. A final, slightly less odd placeholder image exists for the mutant proto-pet with less textures and incomplete lighting. There are 3 unused weapons. One of them creates a trail of fire behind you, another is a weapon similar to the Mine Glove, and the last is the Glove of Doom from the original game. Mike Stout said, "I remember those. We made a whole bunch of weapons during pre-production and picked the top 12 or so. I remember we didn't pick the Flame Boots one because they weren't very effective. It was just too slow by comparison with the other weapons." Ratchet looks completely different in the Japanese version of the game, with a bigger head, different eyes, and very large eyebrows. There's a message in the code that says, "This message no longer exists. Remove tag from code MJS." MJS was likely referring to one of the programmers on the game. The interior of the weapons facility on planet Tadano is supposed to have its own music, but for some odd reason, it just doesn't play. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, make sure to share it with someone else who might be interested. Did you know that Ratchet and Clank would cut DLC from Little Big Planet? Check out our LBP1 episode by clicking here.